What's up, y'all? This is Dr.SYN-Q. Today is Sunday, July 7th. And we are still victims of racism, white supremacy. In a system of racism, white supremacy. A global system. The racist white supremacists have this planet on lock. It is a prison planet. And all non-white people are prisoners of war. So, I've always been the one that just doesn't go with the crowd, you know? I've always had this sense in my mind that the masses of the people are kind of like sheep, you know, very easily led, easily misled. And so I'm usually the one that if there's a crowd running somewhere or going someplace, and people are saying, "Hey, come with us, come on over here with us," I start doing a whole lot of questioning and looking around because I want to know why is the crowd running that way. And if I can't see why, I'm either going to stand still and make a lot of observations, or I'm going to run in the opposite direction of the crowd. That's just been my nature. I tried to go along with the crowd as a teenager to, win friends. I put friends in quotes, and it didn't work out for me. I said, you know what? I'm just going to be myself. So here I am today. And I'm looking at ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves. Now, I have nothing against the people who call themselves American Descendants of Slaves. I have nothing against the founders of the American Descendants of Slaves movement. But I do have a lot of questions that I want a bunch of you to think about. So right now, what you're looking at is a list of terms that have been applied to us as a people. Negro, right? From the 1400s to the 1960s, when the racist white supremacists of Portugal, also known as the Portuguese, first enslaved Africans. When they first went to Africa and kidnapped slaves, they were the first so-called Europeans to do so. And when they did it, they gave us the name Negro or Negro. They called us Negro, which just means black. Actually, I think if I go farther, I think it was actually the Dutch who were the first ones to enslave Africans, but the Portuguese took it on another level. They took it on a massive level, learning from what they saw the Dutch doing. I believe that. I could be incorrect, but when the Portuguese enslaved Africans, enslaved our ancestors, they gave them the name Negro. Okay? And then the Spanish saw what the Portuguese were doing, because all the so-called European countries were competing against one another for resources. And when the Spanish looked at Portugal and said, hey, look at them. What's going on with them? They got a lot of activity going on over there. They got a lot of money. They getting wealthy. We got to find out what the hell's going on. Once they found out what was going on, they got involved in the Holocaust, the African Holocaust. And because they use a similar language, Spanish and Portuguese are very similar. They are dialects of Latin. They just kept the word negro. And then you had the French. I believe it was the French that came next, who observed what the Portuguese and the Spanish were doing. They just continued to use the word negro as well, I believe. Or maybe they used noir. I don't know. But I know that the British were definitely observing the actions of the Spanish. And because of the bastard language of English, the way it's made, if they don't have a word to describe or to apply to something that they discover, then they just take on the word that comes from the language that they discovered it in. So negro became negro in English. Okay? So from the 1400s to the 1960s, we were called negro or negro. It's the same damn word. In the 1940s, 1960s, according to people that I knew who grew up during that time, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, we were called colored. Our ancestors were called colored. Now there's some newfound research that intimates that colored meant that you were that you had European ancestors. I'm still researching that, but we were called colored. We called ourselves Negro and colored around the same during the same period. Then in the 1960s, we had the youth that decided to say, "Oh, we're not gonna call ourselves Negro or colored, because those are derogatory words. We don't like those words. We don't like how those words sound. So we're gonna call ourselves black." I'm thinking this is where it came from. I myself believe that some very smart and powerful white people out there was playing a trick on words with us, and just said, "Hey, let's start teaching them to call themselves black," and we just kind of ran with it. You know, all they had to do was have some key figures, some influential black people in the areas of entertainment and politics use those words, and the rest of the sheep, we'd follow. Then briefly, we had between the 1960s and the 1970s, Afro-American. I remember that. I remember when people were calling themselves Afro-American, but black was still the main sticking word, the word that stuck more over Afro-American. So it was brief. 1970s or late 1970s, African-American was being used a little bit, but not much. Everybody was still sticking to black and Afro-American. I can remember when I was in high school, Berkeley High School, we started using the term African-American. I remember the African-American Studies Department that I attended, it was just headed by Richard Navies, and we were using that term. In fact, a lot of us was just referring to ourselves as African as well. There was a lot of reggae music using the word African. You know, there was a popular reggae song, if I remember, it was called It Doesn't Matter Where You Come From, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. You know, that song was a nice song. But being called African American didn't really pick up until I think I'd say the late 90s or the early 2000s. We started using the term African American. Okay. Now we supposed to call ourselves American descendants of slaves? Okay, all of this, people, is the one thing I can tell you that we certainly are, when we as a people keep going through all these name changes, is confused. We are absolutely 100% out of our effing minds. Okay? It should tell you something right now that whether we've been Negroes, coloreds, blacks, Afro-Americans, African-Americans, or American descendants of slaves, the racism, white supremacy has not changed. It doesn't really matter what we call ourselves. Giving ourselves some kind of name as a people is not going to stop our mistreatment. It's not going to stop. Now, this is why I prefer to use the words victims of racism, white supremacy, because we're confused. We are confused about what racism, white supremacy is and how it works. Therefore, we are victims. Just like Malcolm said a long time ago, we've been hit on the head with Plymouth Rock. Nobody has come along and repaired us. We have the damage, the brain damage that we suffered from being hit with that rock. We haven't undergone any kind of therapy or even any repair. The head, the wound is still fresh. The blood is still pouring out. We are still dazed and dizzy from the devastation of the hit. We're disoriented. Imagine somebody hitting you in your head so hard that you don't remember who you were. Or you just start trying to come up with all these names because you don't remember who you was, but you just start coming up with all these names to try to apply to yourself so that you can find some ground. You ain't gonna find no ground. So that's one reason why I'm not down with being called American descendants of slaves. But, you know, to each his own. Now, the next thing I wanted to just show was a map. Okay? What is America? Is this place right here just America? It says United States of America. This right here is North America. This right here is Central America. This right here is South America. So if you say that you're an American descendant of slaves, and all of these countries had slaves. The Portuguese brought African slaves to Brazil. The Spanish brought African slaves to all of these countries here. The Spanish brought African slaves to these countries here. The French, Spanish, and Portuguese brought African slaves to all these islands right here. And the British. The British brought African slaves to some of these islands. They brought African slaves to Belize. And we know they brought African slaves to the United States. Okay? So when we start calling ourselves American descendants of slaves, and you say you don't want to include black people from Brazil, black people from Venezuela, Jamaicans, Cubans, any black people from any of these other places. But they're descendants of slaves, and this is America. So technically, they're American descendants of slaves too. You know, just trying to give you something to think about with all the confusion that's going on. But now I'm going to go to NCOBRA, and I should have done this first because NCOBRA is the elder. They're the elder. They've been involved in the reparations movement for over 30 years. I remember I used to read about them, their activities, in the Final Call newspaper, which was the only way I found out about them, by the way, because the media, during that time, the racist white supremacist media, they wasn't putting nothing out about reparations. They wasn't barely putting anything in the news about black people. The only time they put something about black people in the news is if it involved a crime that included some white people. If the black person was a victim to some white folks, or if the white folks were victims of the black people, you know, in whatever crime it was that was committed, they would put it out there, you know. And not all of them. They still picked and chose which stories got to be out there. So we've always, when I was growing up, when you wanted to know what was going on in the black collective, you had to read about it in a black newspaper. And the Final Call newspaper was the only one that I was familiar with for a long time because it was a national newspaper. So anyway, I used to read about, they would interview different people from NCOBRA who would talk about, you know, try to keep you up to date on what was going on with reparations. And let's see, we go to About Us. Here's the main thing I want to explain to you is that NCOBRA has been involved in this reparations thing for a long time. We're talking like 30 years. I said that once, okay, and I may say it again other times because I'm trying to hammer it in your head. But it says here, NCOBRA's founding meeting, September 26, 1987, was convened for the purpose of broadening the base of support for the long-standing reparations movement. Organizational founders of NCOBRA include the National Conference of Black Lawyers, the New African Peoples Organization, and the Republic of New Africa. NCOBRA has individual members and organizational affiliates. It has chapters throughout the U.S. and in Ghana and London. It is directed nationally by a board of directors. Its work is organized through 9 national commissions: economic development, human resources, legal strategies, legislation, information, and media. Membership and organizational development, international affairs, youth, and education. Now, the key thing is right down here. It says in 2003, NCOBRA formed a 501(c)(3) corporation, NCOBRA Legal Defense Research and Education Fund. The mission of this 501(c)(3) is to develop and implement projects to educate and seek reparations for Africans and people of African descent. As a 501(c), it will not engage in lobbying, which is one of the primary focuses of the parent organization, NCOBRA. So, folks, that key word is lobbying. Do you know what a lobby is? A lobby is the original term that they use for what a lot of people had been calling for a long time a special interest group. Okay? Lobbies are organizations that spend a lot of time and energy dealing with members of Congress, people who are part of the legislative branch of the government, in order to get them to change policy, to change public policy. Okay? So NCOBRA has 30 years experience of doing that. They got these commissions here. Here's the Legal Strategies Commission. See if I can get that in here. Legal Strategies Commission was formed in 1993, Baton Rouge. Its mission is to develop legal strategies to advance the movement for reparations. I'm going to leave it right there. Well, no, let's go ahead. Initially, the Legal Strategies Commission included legislative work as well as litigation. Under the commission's leadership, numerous legislative bodies and civic and legal organizations passed resolutions in support of reparations for African descendants in the United States and endorsing H.R. 40, the Congressional Reparations Study Bill introduced by John Conyers every Congress since 1989. In 2000, the legislative and litigation demands were so great that the board of directors created the Legislative Commission to focus solely on legislative initiatives. Okay, so let's look at the Legislative Commission of NCOBRA. Mission statement. The mission of the Legislative Commission of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America is to work towards achieving a comprehensive award of reparations for African Americans based on slavery and post-slavery discrimination in the legislative arena through support of reparations initiatives at the federal, state, and local levels. So look at this plan. In support of this mission, the Legislative Commission will seek to achieve passage of H.R. 40, introduced each year since 1989 by Congressman John Conyers and by NCOBRA's official liaison with the office of Congressman John Conyers. Work towards congressional hearings on reparations. Seek the introduction of a companion bill to H.R. 40 in the Senate. Be an advocate for the introduction and passage of reparations legislation nationwide. Maintain a repository of reparations legislation introduced and or passed at the federal, state, and local levels. Prepare and disseminate materials to assist NCOBRA chapters in their lobbying efforts. Formulate objectives and a strategic legislative agenda for each congressional session. I mean, look at this, man. This is a detailed plan right here. Okay? They got reparations resolutions. This says a statement of purpose. This is a details. And you guys can go to this website and check this out. Membership and organizational development. They got that set up. Our ancestors have shown us that people in power will never concede anything without a demand. The strength of our grassroots reparations movement will determine whether our demands are met. Support for the reparations movement will depend upon how well informed we are about the issue. As more and more information reaches the people, there is growing acceptance of the worthiness of the African descendants' quest for reparations for this generation, for our children, and for generations yet unborn. This is why NCOBRA's membership is growing and why your membership in NCOBRA is so important. Now, mind you, it's taken a long time. When I tell you that last month, when they had the reparations, they were showing that on TV. And then you have all of these candidates, mainly a lot of white candidates, presidential candidates talking about reparations. You have to understand that something is amiss. This is nothing new. It's new that they're speaking about it and that they're addressing it. But this issue came up 30 years ago, and these candidates, presidential candidates, were not touching it. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? They were not touching it. This is not NCOBRA's fault. It's not that NCOBRA hasn't been doing any work. And mind you, I'm not a supporter of NCOBRA. I haven't given any money to NCOBRA. NCOBRA hasn't given no money to me. I'm not a member of NCOBRA. Okay? I'm just sitting here trying to use my brain. Okay? That's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to use my brain. And I'm thinking, I say, look, if I got two people that want to teach me something. I got one person who's got 8 months experience in being a math teacher and teaching math, and another person who's got 30 years experience in teaching math. I'm going to go with the one that's got 30 years experience in teaching math. Okay? That's just me, though. You guys make your own decision. But I'm just saying. And NCOBRA is someone that's extensive in this thing. Okay? They've been doing this for a long time. All right? They have connections in Congress. They've been dealing with people in Congress. Now, you go to their website. This is NCOBRA.org. They have lots of information on this site to help you learn about just exactly who they are and what they got going on. Okay? I found here on under resources. So this is their paper. They have a periodical called the Reparations Times. There's Johnny Cochran. Now, y'all know Johnny Cochran was a tough dude. Okay? Quincy Jones. But they got this publication here that explains a lot about what they've been doing in these past 30 years. This is not somebody that's just been sitting around doing nothing. Okay? Look at it. State and local municipalities supporting H.R. 40. So, now I know that ADOS is in support of H.R. 40, but let's get something straight here. It looks like NCOBRA is the group that got H.R. 40 in Congress. Okay, I could be incorrect. Okay, but look at this. Black reparations research links. Okay, you got all of this here to look at, to find out the details that they've put together. Okay, now I see something here that says Jamaica reparations movement. So that's gone. That don't even exist anymore. But it looks like it was something that was going to run down the details of that. But that doesn't mean that NCOBRA is behind it or sponsoring it. It just means that they recognize and support Jamaicans getting reparations. Now, the other website that they have is called NCOBRA Online. Okay. Now, this one's a little less detailed. It doesn't give all the details on it like NCOBRA.org does. I think they made this one probably for people that don't want to go looking through all that information. I don't know. I have no idea why they did that. That's the ADOS site. What happened to the? Let's try it again. NCOBRA Online. Interesting. NCOBRA Online.org. Okay, there it is. Now, interesting thing that I noticed that they have here on this site is this deal that they call the HR 40 primer. Seize the time. Now, this thing right here is pretty detailed. It gives a lot of details about when HR 40 got started and all the different. It just kind of gives you a history. It says right here, in 1989, issuance of H.R. 40 continues to be a prophetic pronouncement of what the United States of America must do to address its Achilles heel. Moving on. Notwithstanding the reinvented, unabated, and increased evidences of an urgent transgenerational racial divide, H.R. 40 has been ignored, denied, and rendered irrelevant by all but a few members of the United States Congress. However, despite the lack of passage of the H.R. 40 bill by the U.S. Congress over the past 27 years, H.R. 40 propelled the local, national, and international academic and NGO communities, and in some cases, governmental bodies, to assume its charges. The result has been a large corpus of information to affect the goals of the proposed bill, documenting the institution of slavery, its aftermath, and the impact of its forces on living African Americans. In particular and specifically, the following developments asserts the need and rationale for the revised H.R. 40 that focuses on and emphasizes remedy or reparation proposals, programs, policies, processes, and initiatives. Okay, and then it just goes on here, it breaks all of that down, these responses. And let's see. I'm looking down here. I see something about Obama. I know a friend of mine was saying that Obama had stopped the passage of H.R. 40. And from what I know, the way the bill works, the bill process works, there's no way he could have done that. But let's see what this says. That President Obama blamed the nation's racial past in his speech after the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's killer, reminding America that much of the violence that takes place in poor black neighborhoods around the country is born out of a violent past in its history, and that the poverty and dysfunction that we see in those communities can be traced to a very difficult history. Oh, well, that right there was in support. That's something Obama did that was basically in support of reparations. And so, this keeps on going, lays down mentions the United Nations, the International Covenant for the Elimination of Racism, the International Law Commission. Look at all these details that NCOBRA is presenting here in this flyer to let you know what's going on. Now, this right here, this part of the flyer I found very interesting, and I'm going to show you why soon. Now, it says, what is new with H.R. 40? So, that gives you some details. I'm going to see if there's a way I can attach this flyer, or I'll attach a link to this site in my video so you can go and get this flyer and you can read these details yourself, because you really need to be hip to the game, the real game about reparations and what the hell's going on in Congress. Okay? These are all of the original sponsors of H.R. 40 when it first came about back in, this right here says in 2017. This is when John Conyers reintroduced it again. Okay? But here's a look, and this breaks down the details of H.R. 40, a bill to address the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, inhumanity of slavery in the United States and the 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865, and to establish a commission to study and consider a national apology and proposal for reparations. Okay, and then let's hear the findings. All right. Now, further on down here, I saw something later. It's not in this flyer, but on their site where they listed all of the compilations of work that people had done. Like some of you have been talking about Sandy Darity, and I familiarized myself with the work of Sandy Darity a little bit today. But there's been a lot of people who've been working on this way before Sandy Darity. Okay, just, his work is just something else to include in the mountain of work. Okay, because there's Randall Robinson, Claude Anderson. There's a lot of people that have done the research already. But you have to understand that it first has to be approved in Congress to do the research first. The cool thing about it is once it's approved, all the information that they need is already there for them to access. But it looks like the problem is just trying to get the damn study committee to be even approved. Okay? Yeah, I don't see it on here right now, but there was something on here I saw before that they had a whole list of all of the scholars that had done all the research. So let's see. Okay, well, you all can go to this website. This is NCOBRAonline.org. The other one right here is NCOBRA.org. You can go to both of those websites and learn about NCOBRA, man. Don't just take other people's word for it. Learn about it. And get this flyer, right? So, okay. So now we're gonna go to ADOS website. Okay. Let's get off of there. Click on here. All right. So now we're on ADOS's website, and one of the things that immediately stood out to me, and I know a lot of people probably don't check these things out, and it may mean nothing. May mean nothing at all. But you see right here, ADOS. And how that looks, that's in black, that's in red. If we go to NCOBRA online, you see the same thing? That top part is in black, that's in red. Now, Dr.SYN-Q could be reaching. I don't know. Could be reaching, could be nitpicking or whatever. But now what about this, though? Let's see. We'll go to, I think it's roadmap. Pow. See that right there? Now, if we go to NCOBRA online and we go here to this flyer, look at that. Is somebody doing some copycatting or what? Now, I mean, from my perspective, if I'm, if I would suspect that the new person, the 2-year or the 2 months mathematician is copying off the 30-year mathematician. Okay, there's a few little adjustments made, but not enough for you not to think it's not the same thing. You see that pattern? This is NCOBRA's site on their flyer. This is ADOS's site. You see that? So, I don't know, y'all. But, okay. So, get off of there. We're going to go to Yvette Carnell. All right? Like I said, I don't have nothing against Yvette Carnell. She's a fellow victim of racism, white supremacy, as far as I'm concerned. But 2 things I want you to take note of. Okay? I'm just writing my notes here. It says here, Yvette Carnell, it says over here, it says she served as a congressional aide first to Senator Barbara Boxer, Democrat, California, and later to former Congressman Marion Barry, Democrat from Arkansas. Okay, so we got Barbara Boxer and we got Marion Barry. Neither one of whom I suspect, I'm going to tell you right now, neither one of these people, have been supporters or co-sponsors to H.R. 40. Okay? I'm going out on a limb and I'm going to say that. I'm pretty sure that neither one of these two have been supporters of H.R. 40. All right? Now, the next thing we need to do, now, here's one of the things that I'd like to say is some people have been saying that my one friend, Christine, she's ADOS supporter. She stated that a lot of ADOS people support H.R. 40, but they have an issue with Sheila Jackson Lee sponsoring it. And I guess it looks as though, like, because she's sponsoring it, she's hindering the process of H.R. 40 going through. I'm not sure if that's what it is. I'm sure, Christine, when you watch this, you'll comment in the comments or give me a call to let me know to clear it up. But Yvette Carnell, if she was a congressional aide, she knows how bills get passed, or she should know. She should have, depending on how long she worked for either one of these legislators, she should know how that process works, and would be able to let people know what I'm about to show you here. So I'm going to, those are I don't know if you hear my canaries. Let's see. We're going to go to, this is a good site to go to for you to check out bills, anything that's going on in Congress, new laws that were passed, what have you. Congress.gov. Okay. Congress.gov. So if we go in here, and you see I already got that right there because I've been doing a search. So I'm going to put H.R. 40. Okay. There's H.R. 40 right there. And here I see, it says Sheila Jackson Lee, but originally it was Congressman John Conyers. And I don't think he's a congressperson anymore. And H.R. NCOBRA had said that they needed 100 sponsors. I believe, did I read that part? I know I read that earlier. Let's see. Is it in here? In this flyer? Was historically referred to. Let's see. Thought I seen it in this flyer where they said was it the part where it had the original? Oh, right here. Current co-sponsors of H.R. 40. Currently, there are 32 co-sponsors of H.R. 40. Now, this was back in 2017. And it says this number needs to be at least near 100 to move this legislation forward, right? With 20 plus members of the Congressional Black Caucus yet to sign, and many members in Hispanic, Asian, and progressive caucuses that may lend support, we are certain that if we seize the time, we can reach our numbers and get H.R. 40 moving through the legislative process. They needed 100 at that time. Okay, that was 2017. Now, what I saw right here, I see 90. So right here in 2019, it's at 90 co-sponsors. These are all the co-sponsors here. Okay. Now, the way the process works, if you can see right here, you see right here, bill tracker. So it says passed in the House. So the Congress is split into two sections. You have the House of Representatives, and then you have the Senate. Okay. The bill first has to go through the House of Representatives. They have to vote on it and pass it. Then it has to go through the Senate, and the Senate has to vote on it and pass it. Then it must go to the president, and the president has to either approve it or veto it. If he vetoes it, then it goes back and it starts the whole process all over again. Okay. The thing is he can't veto it again. The president only has the power to veto a bill one time. Okay. And it becomes law after that. Now, what's been going on is it hasn't been passed in the House. Every time the bill's been introduced, it hasn't had enough support in the House of Representatives for it to get passed. And I guess there's a certain amount of time that if it doesn't get passed, it dies. And then they have to reintroduce the bill again in a different kind of way, make a few changes, rename, something like that in order to get it going again. So that's what's been happening since 1989. And Sheila Jackson Lee is just carrying on the torch. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, you know, those people that are running in the Olympics or whatever with the torch or the baton. You know, when you somebody's running in track, they run in track and they get to the next person, they pass the baton and that person takes off. Sheila Jackson Lee is just someone who took the baton. Okay? And if the bill doesn't get passed this time, the same thing's going to happen. Okay? It'll, you know, the next Congress that forms, hopefully they'll have somebody in there with all of these sponsors. One of these sponsors will probably take on the baton to keep it going. Okay? And just to, you know, explain it just a little bit more, because this is how I learned. I'm going to tell you what got me interested in it myself. Was this right here. And then, of course, when I went to school, I learned more in American government class. We'll go here. Well, just watch this.
Your mind loves power.
It's great to learn.
Cause knowledge is power. It's Schoolhouse Rocky, the chip off the block of your favorite schoolhouse rock.
I'm just a bill.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm gonna live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
Okay, now you see how that process works? That's what we're dealing with right now. When it comes to HR 40, that's what we're dealing with. And so what I suspect, of course, I don't know for sure, but the two Congress people that Yvette Carnell was not, the two Congress people that Yvette Carnell worked for as aides that did not support HR 40, Barbara Boxer and Marion Barry, which I find is very strange, coincidental, because he's got the same name that the black mayor of Washington, D.C. had before. But what I'm saying is, I could be incorrect, but I suspect that ADOS is the job of ADOS is to pull a huge number of black folks away from learning the truth about how you're supposed to support of learning the truth about supporting of how you can support HR 40. Okay, which means that what needs to happen is you need to find out which of these legislators are in your district. Okay, so like you see how you got all the states here on the side. Okay, every legislator, the senators, the dang House of Representatives, they all have a district where they have to hear from you, the constituents. And what they need to have is more people, black people and white people who support the idea that we should have reparations. They need to have more people complaining to them and saying, look, we need you guys to get this bill, to push this bill through. Okay, that's what they need. Now, it looks like right now, since they got 10 sponsors, they got 90, they just need 10 more sponsors. They need 10 more Congress people throughout the United States that we need to put pressure on to do something about these this HR 40. Now, I believe the one from my district is Barbara Lee, but let's look that up. Let's check it out, because if Barbara Lee is not mine, then whoever's in mine, I'm going to contact them myself. Okay, here's Barbara Lee. And this is how you can find out too. You can go to congress.org, congress.gov, and find out where the district is. So right here, see, her districts in California are 13 and 9. District 13 and 9. Okay. Now let's see if we go to you know what? I think I can go. It's probably set up where you can punch in your zip code. So let's current legislation committee. I'm still new to using this website. Let's go to home and see. Oh, look, contact your member. Contact by email and telephone. So we have representatives and senators. Okay, so how do we find out who my representative is? by state. Okay, I'm in California. So we got all these people. Committee assignment. Let's see. How we gonna find out what district is what now? Help me out, Congress.gov. Look at all these districts California got. So California's got a big influence. 53 districts California has. Oh, look, there's Maxine Waters. I know she ain't in my district. But let's see. How do I find out? Click on that. No. Let's see. Guess we're gonna have to go to Google. What's my congressional district? Find your representative. Okay, look at that. Okay, so not only do they got a Congress GOV, they got a House GOV and a Senate GOV. Huh. Okay, let's put in my zip code. 4590. Michael Thompson. Okay, so look. So everybody in this area, everybody that is in this area, Santa Rosa, Napa, Vallejo area. Wait, is that a zoom? Let's see if I can zoom in that. Everybody that's in this district needs to be getting on Mike Thompson's ass about supporting H.R. 40. Everybody in this area needs to be getting on him. That's the way it works. Okay? So look, so y'all need to go, you need to go to house.gov. You type in your zip code here, hit find your rep, and they'll pop up. Now I got another one because I saw senate.gov. Okay. Oh, they trying to make this one a little bit more difficult. That's because the senators have more power. They got a little bit more power than the House of Representatives. So let's see here. No, I don't want no former senators, you know. Always got to hit us with some confusion. But let's see. We're going to go to California. Okay. Dianne Feinstein, Kamala Harris. Get the hell out of here. Well, Kamala Harris, I saw her name. She's already a supporter of H.R. 40. So now we just need Dianne Feinstein. So everybody that's around here needs to be getting on Dianne Feinstein. We need to be putting pressure on her to support H.R. 40. I'm suspecting that's how it works. Okay? And I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to write letters to Dianne Feinstein and Mike Thompson. Let's see. So now we're going to go we're going to go back to congress.gov. Go back here. Just so y'all see, like I said, H.R. 40, you look on here, here's all the co-sponsors. Now, you know, there's a Thompson. Well, that's not Mike Thompson. That's Benny Thompson. So, and I know I saw Kamala Harris on here before. Well, you can see all these names on here, but I see Mike Thompson. The guy I'm looking for, Mike Thompson, is not on here. Okay. And let's see. And then I noticed that Cory Booker is sponsoring another version of this. In the Senate. Now, where did I see that at? Let's see. Let's see what this. Let's look up to see what the subcommittee is. The last actions. This is what they had on the news on TV the other day. Subcommittee hearings held. House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties. So we don't know what the hell that was about, but I remember we saw that. And all those with the, that was a spectacle. People talking about why we shouldn't have any reparations. I mean, come on, man. I saw it on here before, but I don't know how to get there again. I'm still learning how to work this site. Okay. But let's see, 2 titles. Okay, let's see if I could type in Cory Booker reparations. And see what happens. Now, see, the thing about it is, I bet you somebody from NCOBRA could explain all of this. Okay? Now, Yvette Carnell may be able to explain it too, since she was a congressional aide. But you don't see any details on that website like that. That talks about us. I'm gonna go back there. I saw HR 40 on there, but okay. So now here it is. Now in the Senate, it's called S1083. S1083. So and it was introduced to the Senate in April of this year, read twice and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. So right here it's got 14 co-sponsors. Now let's look on here. There's Kamala Harris. Bernie Sanders. Now I was told that Bernie Sanders was against reparations. So how is it that he's sponsoring this? Now, I've been hearing that in the news, and I've been hearing people say it. But look, Bernard Sanders, he signed it in May. So maybe he changed his mind. Maybe he heard all the mess everybody been talking about him, and he changed his mind. But he's co-sponsoring. Now, I don't see Dianne Feinstein on here no damn where. So she's definitely getting a letter. Okay? But we've got to work on getting HR 40 passed. And the way it's done is by talking to these people, not the ones that are co-sponsoring. Well, we could probably talk to the ones that are co-sponsoring. Maybe they can tell us how to get the ones that aren't co-sponsoring to sponsor. But I suspect that NCOBRA knows all about how to make that happen, and we just need to talk to them. Now, like I said, Yvette Carnell may know also. She may know, but if I go back to, let me see, where was I? How did I get to that website? We'll go back to ADOS. And I saw, let's see, on here, something where she was talking about reparations. They were talking about reparations, where they said they support HR 40 on the black agenda. Okay. And here's another thing. We're going to go to the black agenda real quick. Now, there's a lot of stuff on here that has nothing to do with reparations, okay? We demand a new deal for Black America, which includes but is not limited to, okay? Now, all of these things are acts that have to be passed through Congress, okay? Let me show you. Let's see. It says we need to set asides for American descendants of slavery, not minorities, a throwaway category which includes all groups except white men. That categorization has allowed Democrats to use programs like affirmative actions as giveaways to all groups in exchange for votes. Now this right here, I'm gonna tell you, affirmative action was a joke. Okay, when they first set that up, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they had, huge numbers of us did not know a damn thing about politics, just like we don't now. But back then, when they first set it up, Black people were under the impression that they were going to receive some benefits from that, and the only people who actually benefited from that were white women. Okay, as far as I can tell. Now, this right here looks like they're saying that they need a special setup for just specifically for ADOS that would be like affirmative action, but just for ADOS, right? That's going to require another bill through Congress. Once affirmative action is streamlined as a government program only and specifically for ADOS, the program should be fully reinstituted. Okay, again, another bill. That's going to be another bill. And when I say bill, I ain't talking about money. I'm talking about a bill that needs to be passed. The Supreme Court decided wrongly when it gutted the Voting Rights Act as the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article. And when the Supreme Court first made this decision, I talked about it on my blog. And the solution to this is for Black people to get their own polls. Set up your own voting stations, to get your own voting machines, figure out the process of getting that done. Because the Voters' Rights Act, all it did was it applied specifically to certain southern states, and those states had to follow certain procedure to make sure that they couldn't do some of the bullshit that they used to do to keep Black people from voting. Like prior to the Voters' Rights Act in the 50s and the 60s, they used to ask a lot of Black folks, they'd make them take a test. And the test would have some stupid questions on it, like, well, we won't say stupid because there's no such thing as a stupid question, but a question that you could not answer, like how many bubbles can a bar of soap produce? Some crap like that, which is, that whole thing is that's a whole nother video in itself. This whole thing about the Voters' Rights Act. But in order for that to happen, it's going to have to be another bill introduced to Congress. Okay? Right here. Black businesses only receive 1.7% of the $23 billion in total SBA loans under President Obama's SBA, after having previously received 8.2 under President George Bush. Now I want you to know what this is right here. So I don't know that much about Yvette Carnell, who was a congressional aide for 2 Democrats. But, this information right here looks like something that's saying blame Obama for Black businesses not being able to get loans from the SBA, which is the Small Business Administration. Okay. And thank Bush for making sure that you got 8.2. Okay. It says succeeding as an entrepreneur requires capital. So our agenda demands that 15% of SBA loans be distributed to ADOS businesses. If we're talking about reparations, we shouldn't be talking about loans at all, folks. Shouldn't be talking about no loans. Should be talking about giving some money. Okay. But once again, this is another government action that's going to have to be a bill, a whole nother bill that's going to have to be introduced for this. because you're talking about loans from the SBA. Okay, so this other one, we seek multi-billion-dollar infrastructure plan targeted to ADOS communities, including but not limited to the Black Belt, Flint, Michigan. Reuters examination published in 2016 found 3,000 cities with poisoning rates higher than Flint. This is the truth. They seek a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure plan. That money is going to be another bill. I don't think that's going to be introduced in HR 40 because HR 40 is just about studying for reparations. But you know, maybe this information could be a part of that. But if that's the case, I would think that they would want to talk with NCOBRA. Unless Yvette Carnell, because she was a congressional aide, she's trying to start a lobby of her own. If that's what's happening, then, you know, so be it. But, you know, like I said, NCOBRA looks like they got more experience at doing this. Mass incarceration has wreaked havoc on Black American families. This is true. This is why we're, you know, victims of white supremacy. We also demand that there be review if punishment, bail amount, sentence lengths, amount of time served before parole is being levied at unfairly high levels. Now, all of this too. Now, this right here, when it comes to incarceration, you got two types of incarceration. You got federal, and then you got state. Okay, and this right here is going to only be able to apply to federal. On a state level, you have to go to each state legislature to make some changes. So, you know, and then here in the early 80s, America committed to strengthening the capacity of historically Black colleges. In Executive Order 12-320, President Obama undermined that commitment with changes to the PLUS loan requirements. We call for legislation to triple the current federal allotment to HBCUs. Schools like Georgetown, built by slaves, have an endowment of over $1 billion. This is the transfer of wealth from ADOS to whites. Our agenda demands that the federal government fully endow our remaining HBCUs in a dollar amount that meets the budgetary needs of each institution. Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Findings published in USA concluded that top university graduate ADOS and tech, but their graduates can't find jobs in Silicon Valley. Only 2% of technology workers at 7 Silicon Valley companies are Black, according to the report. And many of those. Now, this right here, I can tell you the main reason why that's like that is because too many of us are running away. We're not, number one, we're not being encouraged to get involved in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Too many of our youth are still being convinced to believe that those are subjects reserved for white people. Okay, so one of the things we got to do is change that mindset and start getting more of our children, more of our youth involved in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we could start our own technology companies instead of going to these white Silicon Valley companies and begging them for a job. Audit the banks to see if there are patterns of racial discrimination in lending and require these banks to extend loans to ADOS businesses. Once again, about loans, we don't need no loans. Okay, if it's got to do with reparations, if you're talking about something else other than reparations, you know, that's cool. So, you know, they have a whole listing of things on here that ADOS wants to get done. And what I would be saying, I'd say, ADOS, look, y'all focus on all those other things and let NCOBRA, since they've been dealing with reparations for as long as they have, focus on reparations. Okay, America has never atoned for its original sin of slavery in the form of reparations. It is our position that H.R. 40 be passed and additional supportive measures implemented. We need to gather the data on the level of wealth that was lost as a direct result of slavery. And that data has been gathered. There's a lot of work that's been accumulated over the years by a lot of people besides Professor Sandy Darity. But if you including Sandy Darity, there's a massive amount of research that's been done to support H.R. 40, right? But just notice how when I went to NCOBRA's website, all they're focused on is reparations. That's all they focus on. NCOBRA is focused on just this, okay? ADOS is focused on all of this, right? How do you eat an elephant, y'all? You know how to eat an elephant? Piece by piece, bit by bit. That's how you eat an elephant. So, all right, I'm done. This is, my critique or whatever, my 2 cents, what I'm saying about ADOS and, some of the stuff that's mentioned on the Black agenda sounds constructive, but let's not include all of those things in the focus to get reparations, okay? All right, this is SYN-Q, Dr.SYN-Q. Peace. Stay strong in the struggle to replace racism, white supremacy with justice.